Squeaking, squealing, or a little shing shing every now and then is not only annoying, but it might be a sign that there's something wrong. Here's the most common reasons that your brakes are going to be super noisy. The most common cause of noisy brakes is contamination. The pads or the rotors might have got some dirt on them, some oil, maybe even brake fluid on them, and it will contaminate them. And this will reduce their effectiveness and cause a horrible noise. But there is a way of saving them. You're going to need to take your pads out and give them a good clean. You can use washing up liquid, but it's best to use isopropyl alcohol or some brake cleaning fluid. Certainly you'll need to use some brake cleaning fluid or some alcohol on the rotors to make sure any residue or contamination is removed from them. Make sure you bed your brakes in again and see if it stops the noise. If your ride started off quiet and it started to get noisy towards the end, it may be that you've used them a lot and built up a lot of heat and glazed the pads. So what you're going to need to do is take these pads out, preferably when your brakes have cooled down, and have a look. And if they've got a glazed surface, like a really shiny surface, then you're going to need to get some fine grit sandpaper and just give them a little rub to get the surface back to a grippy nature. Make sure you put them back in and bed them in as you would a new set of brakes. If your braking power is good, but they're still really noisy, it could be that your calipers are misaligned. You might have knocked it, or maybe some bolts have come loose and things have started to go a little bit wonky. You want your pads to center into the rotor perfectly parallel. To get them straight again, the best thing to do is to loosen these bolts on the calipers, apply the brakes, and then tighten the bolts back up. This should put the rotor back into the center of the pads. If that hasn't worked, you might need to do it by eye, loosen the bolts, and move the caliper manually. If your brakes are working fine and you're sure that the calipers are aligned correctly, and you're getting a little shing shing noise, like a metallic noise every now and then, that could be a sign that your rotor is warped or it's bent somewhere. The best thing to do is to try and identify where the bend is. You can look down the caliper to see if it's bent towards the left or towards the right, and try and bend it back into place, either with a rotor straightener or even your thumbs. If it's raining outside or super muddy and your brakes are howling, don't worry, that is normal. When you get mud and water on the rotors, they will howl a little bit. You can buy organic pads. They do tend to be a little bit quieter, but sintered pads will last a lot longer. But don't worry, in these kind of conditions, well, not these kind of conditions, but in wet conditions, they're going to be extra noisy anyway. If your pads are super noisy and you've noticed that your lever is starting to get really close to the handlebars, this is a sure sign that your pads are running out, because as they get thinner, the pistons get closer to the rotors and the lever gets closer to the handlebars. You're going to need to take those pads out and have a look at them. They should have more than a couple of mil at least on those pads, otherwise it's time to invest in some new ones. Well, hopefully one of those has fixed your noisy brakes. And don't forget to bed them in once you've made any changes. Otherwise, you're going to end up with noisy brakes again for a different reason. But give us a like if you hate noisy brakes.